Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is mindset, and we're going to discuss eating disorders in children. So a little bit of an off topic from what we normally discuss, but this is absolutely prevalent in the world that I live in regards to personal training and nutritional counseling and whatnot. So I've actually helped a lot of clients with eating disorders and how to address them, correct them, modify around them. So I'll go through a little bit of a conversation through this stuff. And what I want to do today is present awareness of why these issues come up, and then offer advice and places to get information to help. So recently I was talking with a young person, and they're under 18, and they were discussing that they had a friend who had issues with nutrition. So the friend wasn't eating. They could see that they were losing weight, and they were getting kind of like that type of thin where you're wondering, like, oh no, what's happening kind of thin. And they had talked with their friend, and their friend said that, in a sense, the friend didn't really recognize what was going on or what they were doing it for. But in roundabouts ways, they were saying that by avoiding food, they were able to feel like they were in more control of their life, control of their emotions. And that's actually something that's very common. So in today's podcast, we're going to talk about 6 reasons why, just 6 common reasons. Not that there's only 6, but 6 common reasons why people develop eating disorders. And one of them is control, a sense of control. And that's what her friend was doing, was trying to find control in the chaos of life. And as teenagers and children, so we would think sometimes as adults, we wonder, kids' lives are so easy. What in the world do they ever get stressed about? Oh, they're insanely stressed all the time. So I have a joke where recently I just turned 36 years old, and I said, man, I feel like I'm old. And my clients and friends and stuff in their 50s and 60s, they're like, you're not old. And I always tell them, I go, well, this is the oldest I've ever felt. So it's the oldest I've ever been. It's the oldest I've ever felt. So it feels old to me. And that's going to be what children experience when they're experiencing stress of life. Is as adults, we may get to see further ahead down the line that certain things don't matter. So, for example, how cool you are in school. So, where your status is amongst your social network in school. We recognize when you graduate from high school, oh man, that crap didn't matter at all. So, you move on with your life, you go on to the next big things, and some of the people you thought were cool don't do the cool things that you thought they were ever going to do. Some of the people you thought were dorks end up doing the cool stuff. So life just changes immensely when you get out of high school, to the point where you recognize a lot of the drama of high school didn't matter. But we only know that as adults because we've now seen what happens after that moment. So kids and children, they're stuck in that moment. That's the only moment they're aware of. So everything that matters to them matters intensely. So there was a comedian, Brian Regan. He had a joke where where a kid was holding a balloon, and the balloon started, like, he lost grasp of the balloon, and it was filled with like helium, so it started floating away. And the kid was freaking out. And he said, as adults, we sometimes look at the kid and we're like, what's wrong with you? It's fine. We'll just get you another balloon. What does it matter? And he was jokingly saying, like, to that kid, that balloon is everything. So he said, as an adult, imagine that you pulled out your wallet, and all of a sudden it started floating away. It slips out of your hand, it starts floating away, and you're screaming and screaming, trying to get your wallet back. And somebody says, oh, what does it matter? We'll just get another wallet. Of course we wouldn't be. We're like, no, that one has my driver's license. It has my, my debit card, credit card. It has all my stuff. It's my wallet. I don't want another wallet. I want my wallet. And that's what you're saying, is like, to children, when their balloon would float away, they don't want another balloon. They want their balloon. So to them, the experiences they're having in the moments they're having them, it's very, very intense. So, for example, one of the reasons why children will develop eating disorders is peer pressure, trying to fit in. So if they feel like they're And it doesn't even have to be aesthetics. So, like, we would typically think, like, oh, okay, if they feel like they're overweight, they're going to develop an eating disorder to try to get skinny and be like the cool kids. But it also can be developed by just not liking other aspects of yourself. It doesn't always have to be physical. So, for example, when I was younger, I was actually anorexic. So, right now I'm 6 foot tall, 280 pounds, and I'm not too chubby of a 280. I actually look pretty decent. So, I'm a pretty heavy, muscular kind of guy, but I wasn't when I was younger. So, I was real tall, real thin, super skinny, no muscle whatsoever, kind of like a little bit of a belly fat going on. Never really had abs, even though I was incredibly thin. So, I just hated the way I looked. But what I hated more was that I had allowed myself to become that. I hated my mental weakness that allowed me to become a state that I didn't like. So I was talking with a friend one time, like it was my 15th birthday, and we were joking, just kind of teasing each other back and forth. And he said the statement of, well, at least I'm not fat. And I remember that statement really shocked me, and I was like, oh, crap. Like, yeah, I knew I was kind of chubby. I knew I'd be classified as fat. But I didn't like the fact that he used it as an insult against me. Now, here's the clarifying statement. It wasn't that I liked it that he used it as an insult. Okay, I didn't like that it was true. It wasn't his fault to insult me. We were teasing each other. We were doing that on purpose. It was my fault that I allowed a thing that I didn't like to be true of me that he could say it. So if he said I'm fat and I didn't like being fat, that's my fault because I allowed myself to become something that I didn't want to be called. Okay, I didn't want to be identified as. So I immediately recognized that there was physical weaknesses, there was aesthetics that I didn't like. So I did want to control that, make a change. So I set a goal of doing 250 push-ups and 250 sit-ups every single night. Now I'd never done push-ups, never did sit-ups, couldn't even do 20 push-ups in a row. Excuse me. So to set a goal of 250 was absolutely stupid. But I set the number, I committed to it, and that whole year, from my 15th birthday to my 16th birthday, I only missed 10 days that year. 7 of which was on a Boy Scout trip, and I was too embarrassed to do it in front of my friends. So I actually missed just 3 days in the other 51 weeks of the year. And I stayed disciplined to it. Part of it was to change fat. I thought doing push-ups would build me big chest and arms. Okay, I had no clue nutrition was involved. And I thought doing sit-ups would help me lose my belly fat. I had no clue that you couldn't spot reduce fat. That you could only, I thought you could just take fat off one spot of the body, and it's impossible to do that. So I didn't know. I just picked things that I hoped made sense, and I just went with it. But one of the main reasons why I did it was due to that hatred of my mental weakness. So not only was I physically weak, but I deemed myself to be mentally weak in the sense that I allowed myself to become in that state. I wasn't mentally strong enough to prevent it in the first place. So I said, screw this. I'm going to freaking crush exercise every damn day. And I'm going to restrict what I eat. And I'm going to become mentally disciplined. I'm going to become so damn mentally tough that nothing in the world will ever break me. That was my goal. So when we talk about peer pressure of fitting in, we do think of aesthetics originally, but also it can be trying to fit in confidence-wise. So my mental weakness was making me all the time kind of be shy, sheepish. Maybe I wasn't as bold and confident as the more dominant males that were my friends. So I try to avoid talking to girls because I just always thought they wouldn't like me. But there was a lot of mental weaknesses, emotional issues that didn't allow me to feel like I felt like part of the group, that I fit in. So sometimes when children develop peer pressure related eating disorders, it isn't always based on aesthetics. So there's many facets in which peer pressure can create pressure on a child and create the need for a sense of control or change. And sometimes the only thing a child can control is their food. They can't control their schedule. They have to go to school. Okay? They can't really control, man, gosh, it's just everything. Like, what can a kid control? Really? So they can control eating or not eating. They can control doing push ups and sit ups in their bedroom every night. So they can control these types of behaviors. But they can't really control much else about their life to get the change they would want. Another reason is like control of emotions. Now, this would be different in a sense of peer pressure, because what about a control of emotions, say, in regards to maybe parents who fight all the time? So their parents are always unhappy, their home feels unhappy, they never feel kind of loved, they never feel at peace. So, in order to swallow that pain of not feeling at peace, they make themselves uncomfortable. So they have the uncomfort, okay, of the atmosphere around them. But if they can make themselves more uncomfortable, that'll give them a sense of control or lessening the uncomfortableness around them. So it's kind of like if everything around me is at a level 6, but internally I'm only a level 4, then 6 feels high. If everything around me is at a level 6 and I can't change that, then I'll make myself a level 8. And all of a sudden 6 seems low. So often children will use the pain of hunger, okay, the pain of nutritional disorders in however they express themselves. They'll use that pain as a sense of blocking out or masking other pains. And that could be the control of emotions. Maybe emotions, like we said, around arguing parents. Maybe emotions of feeling like an inadequate sibling. So maybe they have a brother or sister or whatever who's awesome at everything, and they feel like they're, not awesome at anything. So like they feel inadequate. They don't feel like they live up to the standards. So they have those pains underlyingly there. They're not mentally and emotionally equipped to kind of work through them. So they create masking disorders. And that's one of them would be an eating disorder. So there is release in pain. So for example, I used to do a diet trick when I was trying to lose a lot of weight really fast and I had hunger pains. I would then try to drink 2 liters of diet soda as fast as possible because it made me incredibly bloated, tons of belly pressure, and you just felt like crap basically because you felt just, ugh, I can't believe I drank all that. But it was at least a different pain than hunger. So sometimes you can use one pain to mask another. So we all know this as adults is what about alcohol? So somebody who uses alcohol to mask pain. Every time you use alcohol, it might feel good in the moment, but you almost feel worse off afterwards. And you go back and forth through that cycle because you either never want to address or you can't address the underlying true issue of what you're using the alcohol for to try to hide and mask. So this is some stuff we want to think of. So I've worked with a lot of clients over the years. So like I said, and a lot of them has been teenagers, male and female. And these are things that we want to pay attention to and understand maybe as parents or as adults if my child is having eating issues, if they're looking very thin all of a sudden, if they're exercising a lot. Maybe you never really get to see them eat, okay? There's even fear of like binging and purging, so bulimia. So I remember for a while when I was anorexic, my mom used to stand outside the bathroom every time I went to the bathroom just to see if she could hear me throwing up. Now, I never did throw up. I didn't have like the bulimia type eating disorder. So I remember I'd go into the bathroom, I'd kind of count like 30 seconds, and then I'd say, "Get away from the door." And then I'd hear like footsteps. But that was what my mom was kind of feeling, was she could tell that there was something off. So I was quiet. I was working out every night, but she never really saw me eat much. So when I did eat dinner, I'd kind of push stuff around my plate. I didn't look like there wasn't much being eaten as much as it was just being moved around and kind of hidden and clumped up so it looked like I was eating it. So there are signs of eating disorders, and we do have some past podcasts that will help, okay? And I'll give that information here in a second. So let's look real quick. We talked about a couple of the reasons for eating disorders. So we said peer pressure fitting in, control of emotions. Those, I think control of emotions, in my opinion, is number one reason. Number two would be like peer pressure fitting in. And that can also tie into another one we have listed here is social media and product marketing. So every, makeup ad has some skinny supermodel in it. So girls are going to feel pressure that that's beauty. Also in social media, there is a prevailing theme of what is pretty and what is not. Okay. So that's something that can create pressure to cause an eating disorder. So, as parents or adults, we would want to be aware of what social media outlets our children are paying attention to. So, who are they following on Instagram? If they're following a bunch of skinny models and they're not naturally a skinny person, maybe your child is kind of more athletic. Maybe they're like more stocky built. And there's nothing you can really do about those genetics. But if all they're doing is watching skinny people all the time, then they're going to think that they need to eat that way. Okay? Now, skinny doesn't mean it's bad. So just because somebody's skinny doesn't mean they're a bad influence on somebody. So there's nothing wrong with that. But that is one of the reasons why people would start eating disordered. So another one is relationships. So they get into a relationship and they want the other person to like them. So it kind of goes back to that social media thing where what seems good and what seems like what people like. So if I become that, this person will now like me. So that's another thing we have to look at. Another one we have is the onset of puberty. So as a female starts getting into kind of like starting her period and going through puberty, they might start thickening out in the thighs. They might start kind of growing more curves to their hips and to their chest. They may start feeling like they're getting fat or chunky or overweight, and they don't like that because they see what the peer pressure is around them. They see what social media says is pretty around them, so they know what like their idea of what a potential mate might like. So when they get the onset of puberty, that is actually a pretty risky time for the start of eating disorders. So we want to be aware of that as adults. So at the same time, you'd want to have the talk of how to use like tampons and the monthly cycle. It might be a good idea to start talking about nutrition as well. So a lot of the women I've worked with in the past, we do a lot of sodium control. We control carbohydrates. Doesn't mean we eliminate them. By no means whatsoever do you have to eliminate carbohydrates at all to be healthy and to be physically fit and to look good aesthetically. Okay, carbs are fine. You just need to learn how to manage them. So if they manage their carbohydrates and they manage their sodium intake, then we can manage water retention. So this helps them feel more consistent from day to day in the way they look, the way their clothes feel. So that's another actual reason I don't have listed here. But if you take a young girl shopping, it's more common in female clothing that it is very tight. So it's tight to the body, tight to the skin. So if one day their jeans fit well, the next day they kind of have tightness around their belly, and they actually have some belly fat kind of protruding over the edge of the jean, they're going to think they're fat. They're going to think they maybe have to start restricting their eating. So even trying on new clothes, shopping for clothes can sometimes be a trigger for disordered eating. And then the last one we have there is sport performance pressure. So sometimes in order to be better in a sport, they think they need to control their food and look a certain way. So these are all very good reasons as to why someone may start with disordered eating. So it's something as adults that we need to pay attention to. So we need to see in our children are they open to talking about their body? So typically if they feel shame towards their body, they're not going to want to talk about it. So you can just kind of ask them someday and say like, oh, I saw you were running around the yard today. Like, that's pretty cool. Are you feeling pretty fit? Like, you feel like you have pretty good wind when you go run around some more? I know these are dorky questions, and I'm trying to reach here on some questions. But talking to them, okay? Asking how their clothes fit. Like, if they want to go shopping, like if you want to go shopping with them, and they seem to throw a big fit against it, okay? That might be a red flag that there's something wrong with clothing, okay? So if you don't see them eat much, if you just see them pushing food around their plate, that's something to pay attention to. If you just see like a change in their personality, they're more quiet than they used to be. So maybe they moved to a new school or they started a new school year. And all of a sudden, a week or two into the school year, their personality is just more quiet and calm. Then that might mean like a more like quiet and calm in the sense that they're kind of being introverted, they're shying away from people, they're not doing their normal activities. So when you see changes like that happening, we need to kind of identify there's potential for an eating disorder. So you would check and see, okay, are they growing still? Are they starting to get really thin? Like, did your child lose a lot of weight recently? So these are things where it's hard to recognize that there may be something wrong. But at the same time, especially if you're a parent, you're going to have probably this like innate feeling that something just feels wrong. Like you can tell they're struggling with something. So it's important to keep an open communication line with children about nutrition. So if you don't know enough about nutrition as an adult, and you're like, oh man, I can't talk to them because I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. Well, figure that shit out. Okay, that's your motivation. Figure your shit out so we can help your child with their shit. Okay, so we all are broken. We all have messes. If you have not yet fixed your own mess because doing it for just for yourself wasn't enough motivation, do it for your child. Okay, that's going to make a big difference. So that's what we want to do is we want to keep open communication, be available to our children, talk about nutrition, even just say, hey, I listened to a podcast recently about eating disorders. And it really made me kind of wonder, like, we've never talked about that. Like, do you know what is good for you nutritionally? Like, how do you pick what you eat every day? And then see what their answers are. But have open communication. And don't judge them. Just kind of be there to talk, be there to listen. So the resources that we have available for you is podcast number 135 is titled How to Help a Spouse with an Eating Disorder. And it could be how to help a friend or child. Like, it doesn't have to be just a spouse. And then in podcast 136 is a podcast titled How to Help Yourself with an Eating Disorder. So it's good to check out both, okay? Because you want to find out what you can do to help them. And then also be aware of what's the best things that they can do to help themselves. And then try to stay involved in their life enough that you can make sure that what they need is available to them. Okay? Then you can also ask them to listen to podcast 136. And that might give them more information that maybe they don't want to share with you what's going on, but at least they'll get information on how to handle it in a safe way. Also, if you have any worries or concerns over this, please email us at brutalironGym@gmail.com and we'll be happy to help. So I've worked with therapists before on how to quote unquote control eating disorders. And we actually converted over to exercise type behaviors. So instead of using nutrition and withholding nutrition as a form of sense of control, we've taught them to use exercise as a form of sense of control. Because if you exercise in the correct manner, you can actually exercise every single day if you wanted to. And you can do so in a way that builds your body up. Okay? You can do sometimes with weighted resistance. Sometimes you can do yoga. Sometimes you can do Pilates. Sometimes they can just go for a hike. But they can be active every day and build their body up rather than using nutrition in restrictive ways and tearing their body down. So, really the idea of this was just to bring to light that children can have eating disorders, okay, because of pressures they feel that we as adults may not be recognizing that are pressures in their life. So they absolutely can have eating disorders. So if you feel that might be an issue, please contact us, okay, at our email, brutalironGym@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to help. So we hope that if you know anybody or experience anything like this, you'll be able to impart some wisdom on them, be able to better understand, and maybe help them make a change in their life whenever they are ready. Okay? So again, if you need anything towards this goal, we are always happy to help. We've done it a bunch of times before, so we'll give you the best information that we've found, and we'll kind of develop it from there, okay? So please, please, please reach out if you need the help. Cool. If you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. Also, if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, and suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. You can tell us at our email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful. And thank you for listening. And thank you for watching.